So, Wave 3 of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass has been out for over 2 weeks now, and with the Booster Course Pass now halfway complete, now's a good time to rank the 24 tracks in it so far. Without further ado, let's get into the ranking. At number 24, we have SNES Mario Circuit 3. Although an SNES Mario Circuit track is reasonable to include here, I was hoping that they would have chosen Mario Circuit 2 or Mario Circuit 1. Mario Circuit 1 has the prestige of being the first ever Mario Kart track, but Mario Circuit 2 has more to it compared to Mario Circuit 3. And I would have loved for Mario Circuit 2 to have returned to Deluxe instead because of the way the big jump was turned into a glide ramp in Mario Kart 7 and Tour. Mario Circuit 3 feels too flat, and I believe that Nintendo missed an opportunity to include Mario Circuit 2 in Deluxe. At number 23, we have 3DS Toad Circuit. This circuit track feels like a wasted 3DS slot, and if a circuit track really was preferred, Mario Circuit would have been a better choice. Although with an SNES Mario Circuit having been added in Wave 2, maybe Nintendo didn't want too many Mario Circuits in the game. Alternatively, perhaps Daisy Hills, Cheep Cheep Lagoon, or Shy Guy Bazaar would have been better picks for our Mushroom Cup Mario Kart 7 track. At number 22, we have Tour Tokyo Blur. Of the Tour City tracks that are currently in the Booster Course Pass, Tokyo Blur has become the weakest so far. To be fair, it does appear that most of the earlier tracks in the Booster Course Pass were Mushroom Cup level in difficulty, and starting off with a fairly easy city track, both in design and gameplay, was a sensible choice on Nintendo's part. At the time of the release, Tokyo Blur was not too bad. However, now that more Tour City tracks have been added to the Booster Course Pass, Tokyo Blur now feels less difficult. At number 21, we have GBA Sky Garden. Now the visual appearance and aesthetic of this remake is a bit too different from the original Sky Garden, and not to mention the layout having been modified to the extent that it has. Personally, I don't particularly mind the simplified layout, but it still would have been better to have retained the original layout. And Nintendo also missed opportunities to have made the final curve be an anti-gravity section. At number 20, we have Wii Mushroom Gorge. Now, I personally have never been a huge fan of this track, mainly because of the bouncy physics in Mario Kart Wii. In Deluxe, on the other hand, the physics in this game do make the controls a bit smoother, although I simply never have seen the appeal of the track. On the flip side though, I have no issue with Mushroom Gorge being in the Booster Course Pass. Now one thing I like about this iteration is that this iteration is more faithful to the Wii version when compared to the previous remakes, especially with the number of mushrooms in the cave section, while also introducing new mechanics that were not in the original, like the blue glider mushroom. At number 19, we have DS Shroom Ridge. Of the traffic tracks that are in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I consider Shroom Ridge better than Toad's Turnpike. Although there are many blind turns, and Shroom Ridge is quite a bit narrower than Toad's Turnpike. Now I do like how they added 2 new shortcuts in this remake. One thing I dislike about the remake of Shroom Ridge here is that the cars move in the same direction as the racers, instead of the original arrangement of the cars driving on the left side of the road. They were able to implement this mechanic of opposite direction driving for Toad's Turnpike outside of time trials, and I don't see why they could not have implemented it for Shroom Ridge here. Perhaps they should have done it so that outside of time trials there are 2 random traffic sets, one with cars in the same direction and one with cars in both directions. At number 18, we have Tour Paris Promenade. This Tour City track is the stronger city track from Wave 1, and I suspect that the early placement was because it was comparatively simpler than the later city tracks. However, I have found that the roundabout around the Arc de Triomphe, which is the little arch right after the starting line, can be confusing to players unfamiliar with the track. It is far too easy to drive down the wrong path and or drive around in circles. Perhaps the fixed barriers around the roundabout should have been placed closer to the track to prevent racers from even driving into the out-of-bounds zones, as you can see in the demonstration video I have. At number 17, we have N64 Choco Mountain. Now, I really enjoyed the heavily remixed music of this track, and I also love how, in line with the tour version, the cave was lengthened and a gliding section was added after the cave. The low ranking of this track is because, after 2 more waves, the novelty of Choco Mountain has worn out. I have nothing against Choco Mountain, but at the same time I've never been a huge fan of this track either, hence my relatively neutral opinion of Choco Mountain. At number 16, we have Ninja Hideaway. The theming of Ninja Hideaway is quite unique, which I do like, but after having had 2 more waves come out since then, the novelty of Ninja Hideaway has worn out. The gameplay of Ninja Hideaway also seems to be one of the less polished among the Wave 1 tracks, especially with the physics of hitting the edges of the track. Still though, this remains one of the stronger Wave 1 tracks in my opinion. At number 15, we have GBA Snowland. I really like the way that Snowland was remade fairly faithfully to the original, while adding elevation and putting the starting line on a bridge, as well as adding another shortcut related to the bridge. Now, one gripe I do have about Snowland is that the pond should have been turned into an underwater section with a secret path, like GCN Sherbet Land. At number 14, we have Sky High Sundae. Although the theme of Sky High Sundae is quite unique, especially seeing as there is only one other dessert-themed track in Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe, which is Sweet Sweet Canyon, the layout of Sky High Sundae is a tad bit too simple. Anti-gravity here also feels kind of a bit forced. The floaty physics do make karts control differently here. And the camera angles, especially on the uphill climb section, also result in blind jumps, which are not ideal, especially for first-time players. At number 13, we have 3DS Rock Mountain. Now, I would consider Rock Mountain the weakest track in Wave 3. Although Rock Mountain is still stronger than some of the earlier Booster Course Pass tracks due to its use of anti-gravity, especially when compared to tracks like Toad Circuit and Sky Garden, this track has lost some of its luster, especially because gliding is no longer a new game mechanic. And I also prefer how the rocks look in the original Mario Kart 7 version of Rock Mountain when compared to this remake. At number 12, we have Tour New York Minute. Now, seeing as New York Minute has barely returned to Mario Kart Tour after the initial New York Tour in September 2019, I'm happy that they brought this back to the Booster Course Pass. I especially like how each lap corresponds directly with each numbered variant of New York Minute, such as how lap 1 corresponds to New York Minute 1. They've also incorporated a bit of a split path in the first 2 laps, which I enjoy, as you can see in the video clips right now. The only reason that New York Minute is ranked comparatively lower is because there are so many other great tracks in the Booster Course Pass. At number 11, we have DS Peach Gardens. Now, I personally have never been a huge fan of Peach Gardens, but also have nothing against it. I am very pleased with how they remade Peach Gardens in the Booster Course Pass. Now, I especially enjoy that they added topiaries of Peach, Luigi, Toad, and Toadette. And of course, let's not forget about the final lap being done in reverse, and it's even possible to glide through the edges of the topiaries. My personal favorite of that is gliding through Toadette's head while playing as Toadette, as seen in the video clip. Although part of me wishes that they retained the original maze layouts, this new layout is still good, and of course I love the topiaries. At number 10, we have Tour Sydney Sprint. Of the 2 city tracks in Wave 2, Sydney Sprint is stronger than New York Minute because it has a more unique layout. In particular, this is the first Tour City track to have a lap start in the reverse variant, seeing as lap 3 begins in the opposite direction from laps 1 and 2. The Deluxe iteration also introduced what would later become Sydney Sprint 3 in Tour before the formal inclusion of that variant in the latter game. At number 9, we have Tour London Loop. The layout of London Loop is quite complicated, especially for first-time players, and like in Paris Promenade, there is a roundabout which can be confusing for beginners. Additionally, unlike with Berlin Byways, the gameplay of London Loop is a bit more boring as there are no moving obstacles until lap 3. But I will say that one Chomp swimming in the Thames in lap 3 is hilarious. At number 8, we have N64 Calamari Desert. Calamari Desert has always been one of my favorite Mario Kart 64 tracks, mainly for its unique features. It is the only Mario Kart track that features a classical style railroad with crossings. Calamari Desert is number 8 because it travels through a different path each lap, with the original Calamari Desert for lap 1, the first section of Calamari Desert 2, which was first introduced in Tour, for lap 2, and the second section of Calamari Desert 2 for lap 3. I actually predicted that this mechanic will be incorporated into the deluxe remake of Calamari Desert, well before it was announced. At number 7, we have Tour Berlin Byways. Now, Berlin Byways is my favorite city track in the Booster Course Pass so far. Berlin feels more lively than London, which is helped by the moving cars on this track. The music is also the best of the city tracks so far. And one other point I have in Berlin's favor is that Berlin Byways is more difficult than London. But in my opinion, both Wave 3 city tracks are harder than their earlier counterparts. And I suspect that this may be because Nintendo went by a difficulty progression with Waves 1 to 3. At number 6, we have Wii Maple Treeway. Although I'm not much of a Maple Treeway fan, I do believe that this is one of the strongest Wii tracks in the Booster Course Pass so far. And I've never disliked Maple Treeway either. I especially like how they gave this track a graphical glow up and even added in the half pipe after removing it from the Mario Kart 7 remake. At number 5, we have Merry Mountain. The holiday aesthetic of Merry Mountain is beautiful, and I find that this track implements the aesthetic much better than Snowland and any other track in Deluxe. I also enjoy that the mountainside is now an anti-gravity, and that the half-pipe of the original tour iteration is retained here in Deluxe. At number 4, we have GBA Boo Lake. I am a Halloween fan, which is why I rank Boo Lake above Mirror Mountain, and it is about time Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe got another spooky track, after 8 years of Twisted Mansion being the only spooky track in the games. For reference, I do not count GCN Luigi's Mansion because that is a battle course in Deluxe. The way that Boo Lake was remade from the GBA, while based on the Tour remake, is what a good Booster Course Pass track should be, by including anti-gravity and underwater. It is also hard to believe that this is the first track added in Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe in 8 years that includes an underwater section, because neither the Wii U DLC nor the first 2 Booster Course Pass waves included any underwater sections. At number 3, we have Wii Coconut Mall. Coconut Mall is my favorite track in Mario Kart Wii. I've always loved the allure of driving through a mall, which has certainly helped in the Wii iteration featuring the Miis saved on the Wii console. Although the Deluxe iteration feels more empty than the Wii iteration, and I missed the Have a Nice Day sign before the big jump, Coconut Mall was my third most desired track to be remade in either Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or the next Mario Kart game. The remixed music is also quite good, especially this part with the saxophone. This saxophone part is my new favorite part of the Coconut Mall music. This leaves DS Waluigi Pinball and 3DS Rainbow Road as my top 2 tracks in the Booster Course Pass so far. To reduce spoilers, I will go straight to my number 1 track and then afterwards discuss number 2. And now, my number 1 track in the Booster Course Pass so far is 3DS Rainbow Road. I've waited 8 years for this masterpiece of a Rainbow Road to come to Mario Kart 8 and or Deluxe. While I don't have much to add beyond what many people have already said about 3DS Rainbow Road, this is the one reason I bought the Booster Course Pass in the first place, seeing as 3DS Rainbow Road was at the top of my DLC wishlist. Even though this is easily my favorite track in the Booster Course Pass so far, I do have a few nitpicks. One nitpick is that I wish that the final section would have been in anti-gravity, and that, like with N64 Rainbow Road, the final jump would have been upgraded to a glider ramp. Another nitpick I have is that the star that used to be seen at the final turn is gone. The star has been moved to a different part of the track. I will admit that the new position and shadows casted by the new position is growing on me, but some of the emotional feelings of climbing up that final turn are gone. Now still though, for coming to Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe after so long, 3DS Rainbow Road easily takes the top spot. I will say that it is the chord progression before the N64 motif that makes this Rainbow Road theme my favorite, rather than the N64 motif itself. Additionally, this beat stop in the remixed music is a good addition to this already emotional music track. Although the remixed music feels less emotional than the original music of 3DS Rainbow Road, I find that this remix has grown on me, especially because of that beat stop. And that leaves DS Waluigi Pinball as my second favorite Booster Course Pass track so far. The neon aesthetic and special sound effects make this my favorite Mario Kart DS track, and the Deluxe remake is almost how I envisioned Waluigi Pinball in HD. My only complaints are that 2 of the original sound effects are no longer present, the Pinball Lose sound effect near the end of the track and the unique position advancement sound effects. And I also wish that anti-gravity was incorporated along the green, twisty downhill slope at the very least, if not the entire pinball table up until the bumpers. Still though, Waluigi Pinball was my second most desired track for the DLC, or a new game, and that is why this track is number 2 on my list. Additionally, I would have preferred for Waluigi Pinball to have received a new remix of its music, to keep with the previous trend of Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe having unique remixes for every track, such as how Mario Kart Stadium and the new Mario Circuit have different mixes of an otherwise identical music track. Now to be fair though, Waluigi Pinball did share its music with DS Warrior Stadium in Mario Kart DS. Here is a final look at my overall rankings in a tier list format. As seen in my tier list, I like 3DS Rainbow Road so much that it is in its own tier, but otherwise I don't have very strong opinions about the other Booster Course Pass tracks, which is why even my least favorite tracks are no lower than D tier. Now, as seen in my ranking, I've generally ranked tracks from later waves higher than tracks from earlier waves. While this can be seen as recency bias, I really do think that the newer waves are more polished than the older waves, both in graphics and gameplay. I also note that none of these tracks are perfect, and there are definitely things that could have been done better for all tracks. However, I'm very pleased that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has received more tracks and will get 24 more in 2023. And to be honest, I barely care about what comes to the Booster Course Pass after Wave 3. All I had hoped for in Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe DLC or a new Nintendo Switch Mario Kart game was 3DS Rainbow Road, Waluigi Pinball, and Coconut Mall, in that order. And this is why I found it hard to rank every single Wave 1 to 3 track. I generally don't have strong opinions on the tracks other than my top 5. Thank you for watching.